They say silence can be deafening. But on that cold morning in London, Prince Harry's silence was something else entirely. It wasn't grief. It wasn't regret. It was fury. Quiet, tightly coiled fury. No official words were spoken. No press statement. No smiling exit through the cameras. Just a face set like stone, a clenched jaw, and footsteps that echoed across the marble floor of the United Kingdom's highest court. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, son of a king, stormed out of his final legal showdown with the British press and didn't look back. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Why? What happened inside that courtroom that made a man known for relentless public crusades against tabloids, the palace, even his own blood, suddenly go silent? Why did the very case that was supposed to bring him justice instead leave him humiliated? And most of all, what does this mean for everything he's built since walking away from the royal family? Let's take a breath here, because what just happened in London isn't just about court documents and legal jargon. It's about the collapse of a narrative, a war Harry waged for years, on principle, on pain, and perhaps on pride. And now, that war might be over, but not in the way anyone expected. If you've been following Harry's legal battles with the British press, you know this wasn't his first round. He's sued multiple outlets. He's won some, lost others. But this time, this one was different. Not because it was louder or more publicized. In fact, it was quieter, colder, deadlier in tone. The kind of courtroom silence that only happens when reputations, not just rulings, are on trial. See, this was the final appeal, the last chance. After years of pushing back against what he called a system of media abuse, Harry brought his claims all the way to the United Kingdom's highest court. He was demanding accountability, demanding privacy, demanding, in a way, to rewrite the rules that have governed royal coverage for decades. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt like he might do it. But here's the part no one really wants to talk about, even those who rooted for him, even those who believed in the cause. Ow, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Now go to the end. Harry didn't just lose. He lost everything this trial symbolized: the credibility, the control, the momentum. He lost how he wanted to be seen, because now the story isn't about holding the press accountable. Now it's about a prince who walked into Britain's top court expecting justice and walked out defeated, furious, and more isolated than ever. You might be wondering, why does this matter? He's not the first public figure to lose a trial. Celebrities sue tabloids all the time, and some even lose more spectacularly than this. So what makes this different? It's simple. Because Prince Harry didn't just bring his case as a celebrity, he brought it as a crusader, as a self-appointed moral force, the man who walked away from the royal family to speak his truth. This trial wasn't about money. Not really. It wasn't even about a single article or a headline. It was about legacy, identity, vindication. And now that identity is fractured. What happens when the very system you try to change rejects your narrative? What happens when the courtroom becomes not your shield, but your reckoning? That's the part the headlines won't capture.
But we will, because we're going to take you through this moment, one step at a time.
From the moment Harry touched down in London, shrouded in secrecy, to the cryptic words from inside the courtroom, to the final ruling, and the exact sentence that reportedly made Harry snap. We'll walk through the psychology behind this collapse, the quiet signals the royal family may have sent behind closed doors, and the explosive leak that might have tipped the scales before the ruling was even handed down. But before all that, before the analysis, the speculation, the fragments of truth, we need to return to that morning That exact moment, because something unusual happened before the courtroom doors even opened, and it started with a single decision. At approximately 7:42 a.m., a black Range Rover pulled up beside the Supreme Court in Parliament Square. No flashing lights, no fanfare, just a moment of pause, one that photographers later described as tense. There was movement inside the vehicle. Advisors? Maybe. Legal aides? We don't know. But we do know this. When Prince Harry stepped out of the car, something about his expression changed.
It wasn't nervousness, not quite.
It was calculation. A subtle recalibration. Like someone scanning the battlefield, realizing the terrain had shifted since they last stood upon it. What did he see? The lack of supporters outside? The way the journalists barely moved from their phones? Or maybe the way his own security team looked more detached than usual? These are small things, but in moments like this, they matter. Because Prince Harry, whether he likes it or not, is trained in optics, in performance. He knows how moments get captured and how they don't. So when he walked into that courtroom, he knew the stakes. He knew the silence in the press gallery was not indifference. It was judgment. And what came next? That wasn't in the script. Let me ask you something. Have you ever believed so deeply in a cause that you became blind to how others perceived your mission? That's what makes this so difficult to untangle. Because from the outside, it's easy to say, he's just another royal throwing a tantrum because he didn't get his way. But the truth is murkier. Because Prince Harry's campaign for justice, however flawed, however polarizing, was rooted in pain. That's not speculation. That's documented. In interviews, in court filings, in body language. He lost his mother to media obsession. He watched his wife face headlines that veered into cruelty. He saw his children dragged into the spotlight before they could even speak. So yes, this fight was personal. And maybe, if I were to double our problem, that's what doomed it. Because when you carry personal grief into a public courtroom, it's not just facts on trial. It's you, your memory, your motivations, your identity. And judges, well, they're trained not to see those things, which is exactly why this trial hurt so much more than it should have. But let's not forget something. Harry didn't have to come back to London for this. Legally, he didn't even need to be there for the ruling. So why did he return? Why did he risk the humiliation, the headlines, the isolation? Some say he wanted to hear the judgment himself. Others say he believed, right up until the last minute, that the court would side with him. But there's a third possibility, one that isn't about legal strategy or political optics. What if Prince Harry came back, not to win, but to witness, to look in the eyes of the very system he's accused of failing him, one last time, to see, in person, whether his truth still held power? If so, why, that makes the verdict all the more devastating. Because it wasn't just a legal defeat, it was emotional rejection, the kind that leaves you hollow and angry and quiet. Now, there's one more detail I want you to keep in mind as we move through this story. A single line, barely noticed in most coverage, a senior court official, unnamed, reportedly said, after the ruling, he was warned not to take this any further. We thought he understood. What does that mean? Who warned him? Why was he being warned at all? And what would have happened if he had won? These aren't just rhetorical questions, they're pressure points, weak spots in a narrative that was already stretched thin, and over the next few chapters, we'll follow each thread, piece by piece, ruling by ruling, until we understand not just what happened, but what it cost. Because Harry didn't leave the courtroom as a man who simply lost a trial. He left as someone who'd been shut out, and what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. So what makes a man come back to the very place that broke him? That's not a rhetorical question. Because Prince Harry's return to London wasn't just unexpected, it was unsettling. No fanfare, no entourage worthy of a royal son, no press release warming up the headlines. He just showed up quietly, almost like he didn't want to be seen, which of course only made him more visible. But let's go deeper. Why now? Why this case? Why risk facing a nation that had grown cold and a press that had grown sharper with every word he uttered from California? Was it strategy? Stubbornness? Let's trace it, moment by moment. Because Harry didn't just return to London, he returned to a narrative that no longer had space for him. And what he found when he arrived, well, even he might not have been prepared for it. It started, as so many moments do in this story, not with a roar, but a whisper. Saturday, 5:10 p.m., a flight touched down at Heathrow's Terminal 5. Private charter. No listed VIPs. But something about the way two Range Rovers idled near the tarmac caught the attention of a single freelance photographer. He wasn't even there for Harry. He was waiting for a footballer rumored to be sneaking back from Ibiza. But when the side door of the plane opened and a single figure stepped down the stairwell, his hand instinctively went for the camera, then froze. Because the man stepping onto British soil looked familiar, but older, sharper, colder. Prince Harry. No wife, no children, just him, wrapped in a navy peacoat collar turned up. Head slightly bowed, beard a bit more unkempt than usual, eyes distant. He didn't pause for the cameras, didn't even glance at the lens. That's when the photographer knew. This wasn't a man returning home. This was a man returning to finish something. It wasn't until the next morning that word leaked to the press. Quiet confirmation from a palace-adjacent source. Yes, Prince Harry was in town. Guess it was about the trial. And no, he wouldn't be doing any public events. That last bit stuck out because whatever you think of Harry, he knows how to shape a narrative. He understands that every step he takes in public is a story. Every gesture, intentional or not, will be sliced, looped, and dissected by thousands. And yet, this time, he chose shadows. Which raises the question, what exactly did he think was waiting for him in that courtroom? Let's rewind just a little, because the public didn't know this was coming. Not really. Sure, they knew the case was still active. Prince Harry's long-running privacy battle with Mirror Group newspapers, the third and final thread in a series of lawsuits against the British media. But most people assumed this one would quietly die off, fade into the bureaucratic fog like so many other court cases. Maybe get a paragraph on page 12 next to something about potholes and council budgets. Instead, Harry came back. And the moment that became clear, the temperature shifted, because even though public sentiment had cooled, the media machine, it snapped to life. By Monday morning, the scene outside the UK Supreme Court was electric, not chaotic, not frenzied, just tense. A line of photographers positioned like snipers, camera crews checking angles, producers whispering into headsets. Has he arrived yet? Is Meghan with him? Do we have confirmation he's inside? But Harry was already in the building. He'd slipped through a back entrance. Not as a royal, not as a VIP, as a litigant, a man, a plaintiff, one of many names on a docket. And that, right there, is the contradiction that frames this entire chapter. Because Harry didn't want special treatment, but he did want to win. And those two things, they rarely live in harmony. Inside the building, the tone was hushed. Security, tighter than usual, but not overbearing.